Hi, this is Jo with C&J Goods, and today we are going to be making a leather face mask with a replaceable air filter. You can use a cotton t-shirt or a shop towel or any other material that's approved that will reduce particles. Welcome to the era of COVID-19. So I've got all my tools out here. You do not need all of these specific tools in order to make the face mask. Really, you need a good pair of scissors, a hole punch, needle and thread, and of course the leather. What I've got today for the leather is a latigo, so it's a nice thick hand. For the face shield in the front here on the outside, it's the only place where I'm going to use this, so you only need a little bit of it. And then I also have a lovely borderline red. This has got a nice soft fuzzy inside because this is what's going to be touching my face, and I just want a little pop of color. I'm tired of working in brown and black. And this is a very light hand, so this is a more flexible leather. I really don't need this humongous big piece, but we'll get into that later. Let's get started. I'm going to clear the workspace. As always with our patterns, I'm going to give you this 2-inch verified square. The patterns I make are set up for an 8.5 by 11 paper, American letter size. I try to keep them narrow enough so if you're using an A4 somewhere, you can absolutely fit it on there too. The length is shorter in the American letter size than an A4. 2-inch verified square. I know that I've printed it the right size. This pattern does fit a lot of face sizes, so you know, don't worry about scaling it up and down. You should be pretty much okay. This is a 2-sheet pattern, so let's get a rockin'. All my pattern pieces on this pattern are symmetrical, which means you can take your pattern and fold it in half here, and all the holes will line up either side. I like to pre-mark my holes when dealing with patterns. Some people take an awl and punch right through to the leather when they're tracing it on there. Just not how I prefer to do things. To each their own. This outer face one is the only one getting used on the heavier leather. Okay, and you'll notice that it doesn't have all the same markings as this. This one's a little bit shorter for reasons that'll become apparent soon. So let's get this marked and cut out. Okay, I favor on something this heavy using the X-Acto because I know this is a fresh blade. I can get it in one pass. If you're not using a fresh blade, it's gonna be funky and you're gonna get some janky edges, kind of like this little remnant here. The scissors also leave these extra little funky lines I'm not super in love with on heavier leathers. So I like to keep my pieces with my pattern pieces in case there's notes you need to keep track of later. You want to try and make sure that there's nothing on the back side or your face outside that's scuffed or a scar or whatever, so just make sure you check the back side of your leather before you start working on it. Okay, I've got everything cut out now. Time to do everybody's favorite part, which is hole punching. I'm going to do the big holes first with my rotary punch. And there's only a few that I really need to do ahead of time. So I'm going to get a hole that's a good size for what I'm using to tie my mask on. It's actually a piece of shoelace. because I don't have a ton of elastic in the house. Other crafters out there might have it. So if you look on the interface shield here, you'll see that there's these 3 holes. Now that's going to be a big triangle. This is going to help you pull the filter up into the mask a little bit better. And what we're going to do, because I don't have a triangular punch, I don't know anybody who's got a triangular punch, is we're going to cut these out. Okay. We're going to take our scissors, and we're going to cut along the outside edge there. Between the holes. So you have a nice little way to grab and pull filters up inside. This is the only one in these face shields you're gonna punch ahead of time. These other slots here are gonna go all the way through. You can see my finger there. You're gonna be sandwiching stuff through here. I wanna make sure you can breathe through as easily as possible so these holes line up as nicely as possible. So we'll do those later. This one's for now. If you wanna be fancy, you could have taken an X-Acto knife and run your blade along there. I just wanted to give you a quick and easy, dirty way of doing it. Not everything has to be absolutely perfect because that's going to be hidden in it as it is. So this piece goes as a strap over the back of your head. These 2 holes here are going to get connected by 1 cut. Again, this stuff flexes a lot, so I'm just going to mark it with a ruler between the 2 holes, and I'm going to use the scissors to cut along the line that I make here. Really quick, I did show you could use the beveler on this project. This is the only place that the beveler is going to be useful, which is this arc here. Okay, you don't need it along the bottom edge. The reason you want to use the beveler, if you have it, is it makes this line, this stitch, just a little bit smoother when it rolls over the top. So this is a little bit beveled in here. So that's where I'm doing it. I'm going to do it really quick. It's not going to be the neatest thing. Again, it's going to be hidden underneath that stitch later. Last step before I start sewing the leather is the wire. Okay, this is a flat kind of wire. You can see this a little wider one way than the other. I'm going to do a little bit more than 5 inches so I can fold the ends to make it 5 inches long. My pliers have a wire cutter in them there. I don't recommend things like wire coat hangers because, quite frankly, they're too stiff. You need something that's light and that's going to be a little flexible because you need to round the ends. You do not want to cut holes in your leather. And 5 inches wide, that bends there. I'm going to fold this under. Okay. Fold this pointy end under again because I do not want to tear my leather later when I put this in. You can always scavenge a little particle mask you may have had laying around for the wire that's in there. So you want 3 times the length as usual. This is a waxed natural fiber thread, which means I'm going to have to hide the knots rather than using a lighter to bind the knot a little bit more securely, which you can do with synthetics. So I'm going to measure there, and I know I need twice that to get all the way around. So I'm going to pull this once, twice, 3 times. So we're gonna do this on the inside. You could do it on the outside if you want to have that kind of look. I know how pretty this piece does not look cut edges wise, so I'm gonna keep it hidden on the inside. I'm gonna start at the top of the nose, a couple stitches over from center. Okay, I've gotten about 3/4 of the way through sewing this puppy on. The next thing I want to do is put the wire in before I finish doing that little bit at the edge. The reason I haven't put the wire in sooner is it's really hard to make sure you don't end up sewing outside the wire versus keeping it all inside this little pocket we've made. So I'm going to put it in the channel here, carefully without trying to destroy my leather. Tuck that in there. Be very careful that when I sew it, it stays inside my stitches versus popping out like that. Be sure I pierced my thread to make it lock in. I'm going to tie a little square knot that's going to get hidden between these two pieces of leather. Finish the nose bridge. Now we're going to do the face shield on here. Now this is the order things are going to go in. This is actually going to get sewn on top. This is the next layer, and then this one. So this is face out, and this is working inside out. Okay, I'm gonna start at a corner and work my way around. The first hole on here lines up with this. The second hole lines up with this piece. All right, so don't panic because the holes are counted perfectly. The crumb hand's a little bit more forgiving, so it's going to stretch over this other piece of leather. If you do not have Latigo at home, you can also use a piece of plastic to go between these layers here to give it a stiffer face. So if you have a cutting board or something that's a thin piece of plastic, I like cutting boards because they're great for pattern making, but piece of really thin acrylic would be good. Just something with a little bit of heft to it. You can't use like the plastic sheet dividers, you know, for putting a binder. It's got to be something with a little bit more stiffness for the mask to maintain its shape. Now we pause in sewing. We want to get these slits in. These pieces are now flush, so I know that when I punch the hole, it's going to go cleanly through both pieces. You can either use a oblong punch like this guy, or you can actually use a hole punch and then join those. If you want, you can just have those little holes. I like to be able to breathe a little more readily, so we're going to make sure we do sort of an oblong shape. So I'm going to do one side with the punch and one side with the hole punch. I have a piece of granite I'm putting down because my table has too much give. I don't want to put my circular punch through my cutting mat. So I've got a rubber heel, a piece of horsehide that I use for backing. So if once I go through the leather, it doesn't go necessarily in here and get dulled. It will hopefully just hit this leather. And I definitely don't want to smack the tip on the granite because then I will screw up the tip. I've got these slits done. I can leave these as holes, or I can join up the holes like I had before. Now, my hand punch is a smaller diameter than the hole punch I found, so I'm just going to go ahead and clean these up and use the same size for all of them. Take my lovely sharp X-Acto and my ruler. Find the edge of one slit. Carefully, try not to cut past into the other side of the hole. And there you see I have similar on both sides. Now this one's a bit bigger because I use a bigger diameter punch. And I went from the hole to the hole versus this one, which I worked between holes. You can see that there's a hole here and a hole mark there. And this punch isn't that wide. I could have done it twice. I just chose to put it in the middle. So I'm going to line up the two facing sides and stitch all along here, and this is going to stick up just ever so much over this piece, which will give it a nice seal when you go to put whatever you're using as your filter in between here. This is a little bit lighter leather, so it's peeking here, unlike this one, which didn't do quite the same thing. It's a little bit more floppy than this leather. So there's the basic shape. I can now bend the wire to fit my nose. You see that it sort of wants to do that, this particular wire that I grabbed. That's the reason I did use it. Fit it in. And you can use this little grab point to help you hold it in place while you spread it out. Okay, last piece of this project is the neck strap and slash over the head piece, this yoke here. I've grabbed a shoelace. I don't have a ton of elastic in this house to use. Shoelaces, strangely enough, in abundance. You can use leather cord, you could use thread, whatever works best for you. What you have on hand is good for this project. I'm just gonna show you how to do this really quick. I'm doing a figure 8 knot because it makes it a bigger shaped knot, and they're hard to get out of cord once it's in there. And I'm setting this one up so it ties behind the back of my head. And we're gonna run this through here. I could have left the ends on to make my life a little bit easier, but I didn't. Okay. We're gonna go over and through. Okay. This is going to depend on your head size, how long these straps need to be to fit you better. Okay, sorry, I'm getting the last little bit in here. Okay, outside, outside, over the top. Outside, outside. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie these behind my neck. So this is going to go over the top of my head, and this is going to go Line my neck. And these guys are going to go around the ears. So I'll show you a side fitting of that so you can see it in profile once it's on.